we start out with a king who is going to marry Hippolyta, who is a goddess. They're getting married. The other side of the story is that we have Titania and Oberon. And Titania has, what causes the rift between them is that she steals this child and exchanges it for a changeling. And a changeling is a fairy, and it's kind of like not a very nice creature, but it's a fairy that changes into a child's form and kind of takes the place of the child, so the humans don't know the child's gone while the fairies are off playing with the other child. So she adopts this child, and Oberon, who is very like self-involved and only thinks about himself, like all the gods do. I mean, if anybody's read mythology, and he gets really jealous, and he doesn't like that she's showing attention to this other being in their realm. And he says, well, I want the child, like he needs to be with me. And she says no. And so he calls over Puck, his little buddy, and says, let me back up a second. In the meantime, when a king gets married, it gives everybody the chance in the village to, they're supposed to get married on that day too. Like when a king gets married or something happens, you have to get permission, and then all the humans have their own weddings on that day too. Well, one of the girls is not in love with the guy that her parents want to marry. So she runs off to the forest, and he runs off chasing her, and she takes her best friend with them. And those are the four humans that are in the forest, and they're having a little bit of a fight and like chasing each other and hiding from each other. And Oberon, the king of the fairies, sees this happening. And this is after he's kind of like irritated with Titania, and he calls Puck over and he says, I need to get me that magic flower so that I can like fix this whole situation. We're going to have some fun here. So Puck goes and gets the flower, and he says, well, I need you to sprinkle it on that guy and that guy and that girl, and whatever the story is, so that when they'll fall in love with who they're supposed to fall in love with. Well, in the meantime, he thinks it would be great fun to sprinkle it in Titania's eyes and play a trick on her. So Puck does all that, and in the human part of the story, he messes up and sprinkles it on the wrong people. So when they wake up, that's that part of Midsummer Night's Dream. Everybody's like in love with the wrong people. For Titania, Oberon sees they're called mechanics, but they're actually actors that are practicing for a play to perform at the wedding of the king. And he sees them, and one of them is dressed up as a donkey. He doesn't actually, I think people think he turns into a donkey, but I don't think he actually does. I think he's actually playing the part of a donkey. And he sees that, and so he goes and has him sit by Titania. And when she opens her eyes, the first thing she sees is a donkey, and she falls in love with him. And Oberon gets such a kick out of that. And then the play resolves by him simply like telling Puck, okay, like do this again, fix it all. You did everything wrong over there, and I'm bored with this, so fix that. And that's the conclusion of the play. So what did I say? Like strife, confusion, and resolution. It's really confusing. Very confusing, but the ballet will make it all make sense. So just come and watch it. That's our job, to make you understand it. The benefits of having students in the ballet is that they get to work alongside the company members who are really proficient at what they do, and their work ethic is just incredible, or they wouldn't be company members. And so they get to watch that all in action. They get to watch how we know when to replace ourselves, when to listen to the director, when to make your own decisions, how to cooperation, leadership, problem solving, staying on task, during rehearsals, especially during our scenes where everyone's there. Now, when you're learning your own individual parts and you have all the attention of the director, of course, that's a little bit easier. But when you get in the rehearsals where everybody's brought in together, then you really have to keep your eyes and ears open. I like to tell the kids, when we turn off the music, they have a tendency to think that when we turn off the music, the kids tend to think that it's recess. It's like, no, when I turn off the music, that means I have something to say, or else we would leave the music running and we would keep dancing. So I just think that they learn how to really pay attention to their surroundings and pull out the information that they're going to need for themselves, and to be in the presence of artists who are, you know, at the top form of their craft. So
into that process?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, the dates for Midsummer Night's Dream were set and contracted last year. So we've known about Midsummer Night's Dream since a year ago. The first thing that happens is, we go into contract with the dancers, and we find out how many dancers we have. So casting is kind of put on hold until then. And then, because it's our spring show, we even get to wait a little bit longer, so that any new dancers coming in at the beginning of their contracts, we get to see how they work, what they can do. They go through a rep show with us. They go through Nutcracker with us on a rep show again. So we're just watching how they work in general, how quick they are at choreography. Everybody has different ways of learning, and it depends on what choreographers they work with too, because each choreographer is given their own free agency as far as who they want to work with for the most part. So that's when that starts. Now, the next thing, I suppose, this sounds like it's the horse before the cart, but then we start thinking about costuming. So after we decide, like, sort of a rough cast, we have to start thinking about costuming. And this is a new ballet, so there's a lot of new costumes. There's some old ones that will facilitate, or maybe, reuse or change, redecorate. But this ballet seems like none of that stuff. We're like, no and no and no. Okay, everything's new. So coordinating that and having deadlines for when we need that, fittings, and then rehearsals. And then the week before we go to the theater, well, not the week before we go to the theater, we try to get all the cast together, and we have complete run-throughs of the ballet in the studios. And we're kind of lucky here because our studios are almost the size of Moody Performance Hall, which is where we've been mostly performing. So we are lucky in that way. It's not quite as big a struggle as it could be. But we get on stage at Moody. First, we have to load in. And then we have to build the sets. There's people off places building sets, that have been drawn up and told, well, we need it to do this or do that. Like with Nutcracker, it's like, here, build a tree and make it grow. It's like, okay, well, we need a painter, all kinds of things. Anyway, so Tech Week, we load in usually on a Monday. And we don't just carry things into the theater. We make sure the legs are at the right place, the drapes on the side, whether they come in or go out, we have to move those back and forth. We hang up all the things on the rails and make sure that they pull up and down smoothly. We put them in the order that we're going to need them to make the least amount of work for us, but it's still work. And then we load all the costumes in, and then we have like a dry tech rehearsal. And what that usually means is that we're messing with the lights and just giving our lighting designer a rough idea of where people are going to come on and off stage. And so she focuses the lights so they're not, shining out in the audience and stuff like that, because each show is different. So it has to be done uniquely for us. And then we bring the dancers in, and then we have the dancers actually on stage. Whether they're in full costume or not depends on whether we have a photographer there, so that can go back and forth and change too. And then we redo the lighting and fine tune it. So that's our final tech rehearsal, and hopefully that gets done. It takes 3 days to do that. depending on how cumbersome the ballet is, meaning how big it is. And a story ballet usually has a lot of moving parts. Then after that, we have, hopefully all that goes smoothly. And then we say, okay, we're going to have a dress rehearsal. And that means we're going to try to run this thing just flat out, see if we can get the costumes changed as fast as we think they should be changed, and get you guys back on stage. So we're, and in the meantime, we've tested the music. You know, we'll get there and like a track won't play or something will skip. So that's a whole process too. So we have a music guy doing that while we're like doing lights. So, so let's say we have the dress rehearsal and that goes smoothly. And then the next day we show up and we do our performance. So yeah, there's a lot to going on in a ballet. And the whole idea at the end is that the people in the audience, the curtains open and they just see this serene or energetic, smooth magic. And they have no idea what's going on behind those wings. And it's always fun to have new people backstage because they're like, I had no idea it was this so intense. It was this intense because I don't know. I guess the rule is like what can go wrong will go wrong. But that's what's fun about it. And then each performance, no matter how much you rehearse it, there's always something unique that happens. Good, not so good, but that's theater. So
Yeah.
all that goes on before you sit down with your water bottle and watch us perform. That ballet is not microwave popcorn. To be a ballet dancer, you learn how to do a tendu. And this is, someone else said this, but I just love it. It takes about 10 years to figure out how to execute a tendu the correct way. 10 years. And I know in this day and age that just seems sort of overwhelming probably to people. They want everything so fast. But it's such a precision thing, and you're striving for perfection. I think ballet is made for overachievers, but people that don't have they don't get frustrated. I mean, we all do, but they're overachievers and they're looking for that perfection, and they have a work ethic that just allows them to push and push and push. Julie Kent, who is now the artistic director down at Houston Ballet, when she was with American Ballet Theater, she said one time that her relatives asked her when she was younger, they said, so are you still doing the ballet thing? And she said, yeah, I'm still doing it. And they looked at her and they said, well, gosh, you've been doing it for so long. Haven't you got it right yet? And the answer to that is like, no. I'm still trying. There's always something else that you want to do, and as soon as you can do it, there's going to be somebody that is going to ask you to do it twice or 3 times or more or bigger. And it's very addictive. Having that kind of control over your body has a certain amount of freedom. And I mean, it frees you from almost your physical boundaries. Am I saying, is that, you know, it's amazing. It's like you have the ability to do all these things. You're not caught almost in a human body. So I think that's what's addicting. Come see Nutcracker. Oh, Nutcracker will be over by the time you see this. Come see Midsummer Night's Dream and our rep show. Our rep show is pure ballet, movement for movement's sake. Some beautiful things. Yeah. Bye.